Welcome to our continued discussion about the basic elements of music. And right now we will go to the instrument families. But before we do that, I would like to just take this opportunity to tell you a little bit about myself, because I didn't get my doctorate in music appreciation. It's something I ended up teaching. And so I just want to talk about the history of Dr. Muchnick just for 1 second. And I started to play the viola. And the reason I say that is because we're going to be talking about that in about a minute and a half. Started to play viola. You don't have to take notes. In 4th grade. And I wanted to play the double bass, but they said I would have to use a step stool because I was too short. So I was very upset about that. So they gave me a restrung violin, and I played the viola. I've been playing ever since. And I grew up in Newington, Connecticut, and I'm a huge UConn basketball fan. Go Huskies, and I got to go to the Final Four in St. Louis, so I got to see both my teams lose. And got my bachelor's degree in viola performance at the University of Hartford, which is actually within the University of Hartford. There's a wonderful school called the Hart School of Music. And I was very fortunate to study with the violist of the Emerson String Quartet. And if you go to the classical section, of course you will after this class, the classical section of any record store, you can find the Emerson String Quartet, and they are absolutely fantastic. So I was very lucky to be able to study with them. And then I took an audition in Memphis and got a job in the Memphis Symphony, which actually is a very, very good orchestra. And I played there for 3 years. I got my master's at what was then Memphis State University. And so I was a little bit unhappy with every time somebody came into town, the only thing to do was go to Graceland. And I was getting sick of going. So I moved. I got a doctoral fellowship to study with the Guarneri String Quartet at University of Maryland. So I lived in Washington, D.C. for 3 years, wonderful years. And then I got the job here in Springfield, Missouri. And she's laughing at me. I love Springfield, Missouri. Who wouldn't? It's a lovely place to live and to raise your children. And I am principal viola of the Springfield Symphony. And if you haven't been to the Springfield Symphony, I'm sure you will. So if those of you out in TV land, if you go to the Springfield Symphony, please come up to me because I won't know you, remember? And please introduce yourself. I saw you on you were my teacher on TV, and I will shake your hand. So if you're ever at the Symphony, if you're ever at Springfield Regional Opera, please come up and introduce yourself. And I'd be happy to talk to you. Hopefully I've given you a good grade too. Okay, so basically that's the very boring story of my life. But the reason why I tell you this is because I do have a lot of insight into the music world as a profession, into the music world as a difficult profession. And there's a lot of struggle. And talking about the struggle, talking about all the nasty teachers, the nasty conductors, the situations that happen on stage, very funny. As a matter of fact, firefall. The fireworks fall on our head as we're playing. Isn't that funny? Just wanted to let you know what my life was about. And so, just segue, talking about the viola, we are going to start, eventually, we're going to start talking about the orchestra. The orchestra is going to grow, right? We're going to start with an orchestra of strings in the early Baroque period, and we're going to gradually add winds and brass and percussion until we have a huge orchestra by the time Beethoven's 9th Symphony hits us. And Beethoven's 9th Symphony is also going to add chorus and soloists as well. It's a huge production, okay? And of course, that won't be until the early 19th century, but we're going to do it. So we're going to follow the growth of the orchestra. And so what I want to do now is just kind of get your minds organized as far as the instruments of the orchestra. And my expertise happens to be the strings. So I'm going to give you an up-close and personal view of what it's like to be a string player. And then we're going to follow the Springfield Symphony as they rehearse, and you will hear me do a voiceover as far as the other instruments of the orchestra, because I'm not that talented, and I cannot play the oboe, and I cannot play the trombone. So we will start with the string section, okay? From highest to lowest, okay? The string section, which is the largest section of the symphony orchestra, has the most people in it. We have the violin, viola, and cello, and bass. The more wood you see, the lower the pitch. So that big old bass is the lowest member of our string family. Now, I add harp and guitar only because, of course, we see the harp in the orchestra. And it's not that frequent, but frequent enough to say it belongs there. And of course, the guitar, a very important solo instrument as well. And we're going to also look at the lute, the forerunner to the guitar, when we talk about the Renaissance. So we're going to follow the development of these instruments. We're going to hear the development of these instruments. The modern violin didn't just show up in Italy, right? It took some development. And so we will listen to that probably more than look at it. The reason why I chose a string instrument is because I always wanted to be a singer. And those of you who know me out there, who are flipping the channels through channel 24, who know me, know that I do sing anyway, even though I'm bad, in front of people too, because, well, I like it. And so people have seen me, heard me sing opera arias, because I want to. And I'm really bad, but it makes me feel really good. And one of the reasons why I chose a string instrument was because I couldn't sing. And the string instruments are probably the closest instruments you have to the human voice. And so that's why I chose a string instrument. I tried the clarinet, but I was very, very bad. So the violin, most of the string instruments developed in the middle of the 16th century, and we will see them just pop up by the early 17th century in their modern form. Some of the greatest instruments of the string family ever constructed were from the period between 1600 and 1750 in Cremona, Italy. I'm sure you've heard the name Stradivari, Guarneri, Amati, Guadagnini, Galliano, and not the liqueur, right? We have these great instruments, and these instruments, people, are worth millions of dollars. Some of them a $4 million price tag. $4 million. They have not been duplicated. Never. No one really knew what Stradivari did to his instruments. Anybody see the movie The Red Violin? Absolutely wonderful film. I love that film because it showed you the history of this violin and its greatness. And one of the things that was inside the varnish was blood, was human blood. You know, there's that story that Stradivarius used blood, that he used crushed glass in his varnish. That's what made that those instruments so wonderful. Who knows? He didn't write it down. But these instruments to come out of this time are masterpieces. And I have played a DeSalo viola worth almost $1 million. And it basically plays itself. But for $1 million, it better, right? So very, very, very expensive. But you can buy an instrument also for $250, a factory-made violin for not that much money. And boy, the difference in insurance is amazing. They are all, the violin, viola, cello, and bass, are all very similar in the way they are played. And I'm going to demonstrate that in 1 minute. They vary, of course, in tone color, just by the nature of the instrument. They vary in range. They vary in richness. Each has their own really different sound, which is, of course, what makes it so beautiful. Okay? And I'm going to show you my instrument. This is a quilt. It was made by my mother. That I put over my instrument when it goes to sleep every night. This is a viola, okay? A violin is smaller, right? Comes to about here. The violin is the highest member of the string family. The viola is the next lowest, okay? Then the cello, then the bass, okay? They all have 4 strings, but there are 5-string basses, and I'll probably be able to show you one in the film clip of the Springfield Symphony. They're all basically played the same way. When I pluck the string, out comes a sound. And this happens because the string is set into vibration. The vibration is caught here on the bridge, okay, which vibrates the top of the instrument, and there's a cylindrical post inside here that takes the vibrations from the top to the bottom, okay? So when I pluck, feel the back. Feel that vibration? It's all based on vibration. Now, the wood, on my top we have a soft spruce. On the back we have a tiger maple, some call it a curly maple. It's a 2-piece back. There are over 60 parts to this instrument. This is a German instrument. It is made by Werner Voigt in 1974. And I bought it shortly after it was made. Violins, basically when you become an adult, are basically one size. Violas, however, a very, very, very different story. A viola, they come in very different adult sizes. And as you know, I'm a little person. And so I have a lot of trouble with this instrument. Just ask my chiropractor. But when you have this thing hanging on your chin for 11 hours a day, you're going to have some difficulty with the back and the neck. So it's very interesting to learn these instruments, but also very, 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 very difficult. And so we're going to see a little bit about how this is played. So this is the instrument itself. We have an attachment here of the tailpiece right here. These strings attached here run up over the bridge to the pegs. These pegs are rosewood pegs, $100 a piece. And of course we have the scroll up here. Okay? And that is the body of the instrument. So when you go to the cello, of course, is much bigger. And eventually, the cello, of course, is held here, and you play this way. The violin and the viola here. Excuse me, I must change my microphone. Okay. Here, somebody figured it out, because the viola used to be played like this, right? Like this, like the cello. And then somebody said, hey, let's see what happens. Oh, this is much easier, right? And so finally we're holding it this way. But this hurts, okay? It does hurt. The cellists don't have it so bad. Bass players, of course, the bass is, you stand up, play it, or sit on a stool. It's a very large instrument. The strings on the violin, okay, the viola violin has 3 strings in common. The A, the D, and the G, okay? But the violin has the upper E string. If I put my second finger here, that's E. That's the string the violin would have. I have the low C string. That's power for you. This low C, which the violin does not have. The cello has the same strings as the viola. A, D, G, and C. But the cello plays, here we go, an octave lower. So, when I play this note on the viola, the cello plays this note. The same note, an octave lower. Okay? It's a bigger instrument. Remember, the more wood, the lower the pitch. The bass is a totally different animal. Okay? Totally different. Very difficult. Very, very thick strings. And I know little people who really play the bass well. I mean, it's not based on how, you don't have to be a big person to play the bass. I've seen very small people playing the bass, so it's just how you learn. Okay, now, of course, these are all played with a bow. Here's a bow. These range anywhere from $50 to the highest one I've ever seen. I'm sure it's even more. I'm sure they're $500,000. I'm sure, but I've seen one for about $100,000. Bows come in all different weights, okay? And what you have to do is buy the instrument first, and then you go after the bow. I have a German instrument, and I have a French bow. So I'm a very international sort of violist. And this is Pernambuco wood. It's a Brazilian wood. And we have the frog down here, which is the bottom of the bow. The bottom of the bow is, on my bow, you have mother of pearl here and silver. And again, this is called the frog. This is where you tighten or loosen the bow. You have got to tighten the bow in order to create resistance so it can bounce and play. Otherwise, it would sound very strange. We have a piece of leather here, and we have leather wrapped here so that you have what's called a grip. And here's the tip of the bow, and this is ivory. Now, the horse tail, and it's not, we don't hurt the horse or anything. This is bleached horse tail. A lot of bass players don't bleach it, and they have black hair on it, but this is horsetail. Now, what you have to do is just like human hair. It gets greasy, so you have to... Oh, that's my medication I lost a while ago. Okay. Okay, now, this is rosin. Just like a pitcher, before he pitches, has to do the rosin thing and then throw the ball. Well, this is rosin, and what you do is you take the hair and you rosin your bow. It's going to give you a lot of strength, and it makes the bow stick to the strings, so you can actually get a sound. Now, I'm a little person, as you can see, and so I have to have a lot of help. Don't answer that. A lot of help playing as far as putting this under my chin. And I have to use this contraption. It's homemade. Doesn't it look homemade? It's very, very dirty. Under my chin. Okay, and that's how I hold the instrument. This is a very unnatural position if you think about it. And then you take your hand and you do this. Okay? Now the unfortunate part about playing these instruments is this hand does one thing and this hand does the other. Okay? And so that's very difficult. Unlike this thing where you push the buttons and if the piano tuner's been there, it's in tune. This thing doesn't have any frets. It doesn't have any buttons. It is all by feel and by training. And all my pianist friends are going to call me nasty messages. That doesn't mean the piano isn't difficult. It's very difficult in a different way. This is difficult in a way that you don't know if something is going to be in tune or not. And so that's a huge, huge difference. So when I take my bow and I drag it across the string, like that, a sound comes out. Did that hurt up there? You okay? How about this? Okay. Fun with the cameraman. Okay. When you drag it across the string, it sets the string into vibration. Okay, and that's how it makes a sound. We tune in fifths. Remember that interval of a fifth. A to D, D to G, and C, G to C. So the oboist gives us an A, at 440 cycles per second, A, hopefully. And we tune. We tune in fifths. And that's a hard thing for a kid to learn, to listen to these fifths. So you really have to train your ear. And how do we play in tune? Well, basically, it's luck, and it's a lot of work every single day, training your ear, because you have to put your fingers down in certain ways. Now, the way I do it is what we've just talked about. I practice tonality. I practice my scales every day. C major. C minor. Okay, that's how I know where to put my fingers. And then beyond that, it's a whole different story. The fingers are one thing, the bow's another. The hardest part about playing this instrument, a lot of people out there might disagree, is the bow. It's the hardest as far as physical playing. Here's a short note, long note, which you just heard. You also can basically can play by itself. Okay, I'm just taking the bow, letting it bounce. I can play one note at a time, or I can play 2 notes at a time. I can play 3 notes at a time, or 4. That's a chord, okay? I can not only play with my bow, but I can also play with my finger. One is called arco, with the bow, in Italian, and the other one is called pizzicato, like pizza. Pizza, pizzicato, and that sounds like this. Pizzicato. I can also use what's called a mute, okay? And I take this little mute, which is made out of rubber, and I put it on the bridge, which dampens the vibrations. Here's without the mute, with the mute. Just makes it very soft. I can play tremolo, which is like a scary movie. Right? I can do that. And I use a technique called vibrato. And this is something that's very difficult to learn. Matter of fact, 20 years in, I'm still trying to figure out how to do it. And basically, singers use it as well. And it's basically wiggling your finger. And of course, that takes 25 years to learn how to wiggle your finger. But here's no vibrato. And here I play with vibrato. No vibrato. Vibrato. So what it is a very expressive tool. You can play slow vibrato, which sounds like a cow in heat. Or you can very fast and make it very narrow. So it's based on vibrations. And the good thing is, if you're not quite playing in tune, you can waver the pitch. So if this is out of tune, just do a real wide vibrato and the pitch is probably in there somewhere. Okay? My friends who play with me said, yes, that's how she plays all the time. So that's the basic ideas about string instruments. We can play harmonics as well, which are artificial pitches. These are kind of weird. Okay, we can do that. And basically, all of these string instruments are played quite alike. The strings, of course, are very different. Some of the recordings we'll be listening to of the Baroque period, they didn't use strings, certainly, that were like ours today. Ours are very, they're steel and pearl-on inside, which is a synthetic material. They used to be made out of sheep gut, you know, so it's a very different sound. And the bows used to be different. Bows used to be held different. So modern playing is very different from playing way back then. And we'll talk a little bit about that, how it is different. And so that's the string family from highest to lowest, and that's how they are played. Now, the harp and guitar, of course, the harp, member of the string family, very, very difficult instrument to play. I'm always amazed at how a harpist can know all of those, you know, pluck all of those strings. It really is quite amazing. And the guitar we'll be looking at as well. Okay, now we're going to have a special performance of the Hawthorne String Trio in performance. And so we're going to listen to how we're going to take 3 string instruments and combine them. Enjoy.